There are mornings when you wake up feeling neither excited nor sad, just empty. You're not tired, but you have no drive to get out of bed. You pick up your phone, scroll through social media, news, emails, then set it down as if you just lived part of a life that left nothing behind. And the terrifying part isn't that you're suffering, it's that you're quietly fading. We are not destroyed by a single catastrophe, but by days that pass without direction. We don't lose ourselves in tragedy, but in unconscious repetition. Stoicism doesn't offer some miraculous promise. It simply calls you back to your most ancient power, the power to govern how you live, how you respond, and how you think. You don't need to control the world, only yourself. You don't need to outrun anyone, just walk steadily on your path. If you're ready to live with awareness, here are 12 principles that will lead you back to yourself. 1. Master your reactions. You don't control what people say, think, or do. But you always get to choose how you respond. This isn't theory, it's the foundation for anyone who wants to lead their life instead of being dragged through it. Your reaction is the first and clearest place where your nature is revealed, whether you live by reason or are led by emotion. Picture this. You're driving home after a long, exhausting day. A car cuts you off without signaling, nearly causing an accident. Your heart races, your grip tightens, and your mouth is ready to unleash a string of curses. Every cell in your body urges an immediate reaction. But in that moment, if you're present enough to pause, even for 1 second, you step outside of reflex and return to self-command. Not because you're weak, but because you understand. A blind reaction is the surrender of your freedom to someone else. Epictetus once said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about them." That doesn't mean you have to be indifferent or numb. It means you must create space between stimulus and response, and in that space lies your freedom, your strength, your character. When others shout, blame, or lie, you can remain calm. Not because you're passive, but because you're stronger than your anger. And that calmness makes you harder to manipulate, harder to wound, and harder to pull away from your true values. Those who lose control often believe their anger is strength. But the truth is, the easier you are to provoke, the easier you are to control. A cold glance makes you scowl. A careless comment steals your sleep. A delayed reply spins your mind into chaos. Are you handing the reins of your mind to all these things? And if so, what will remain except a fragile ego and a storm-tossed inner life? To master your reaction is a quiet but powerful act. It requires no applause. But in that moment when you choose not to respond from impulse, you respond from reason. You've done what most of the world fails to do, held your mind steady in the storm. And that is the first step toward living by philosophy, not just by habit. 2. Obstacles are stepping stones, not walls. Sometimes life pushes you into a corner with no way out. A door shuts. A dream shatters. An opportunity slips through your fingers. The first reaction is a sense of injustice, disappointment, that familiar question, why me? But if you pause long enough to truly look, you'll see what felt like a setback is actually leading you somewhere you never imagined, toward a deeper, stronger, more mature version of yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Obstacles are not the end. They're the beginning of transformation. But that transformation doesn't happen if you just stand there, complaining, waiting for the world to change. It happens when you shift your perspective, when you stop seeing adversity as an attack, and start treating it as an invitation to walk through the fire and forge your strength. I remember the first time I was rejected after a major presentation. I had spent weeks preparing, hoping it would be the turning point in my career. But when the criticism came not about the content, but that I was too soft, I felt like I collapsed. A part of me wanted to quit, but another part, a quiet one, whispered, "Use this." And I came back. I learned to speak with more weight, to stand with more presence, not to please others, but because I was no longer afraid of judgment. That obstacle didn't just make me stronger, it reshaped me. Stoicism doesn't ask you to smile at failure. It says failure can become fuel if you don't let it disorient you. Like a river blocked by stone, you can rise above or change course and discover a direction you never saw before. The one thing you must not do is remain still. We often think obstacles are problems to eliminate. But Stoic philosophy shows us it is in the collision, the fracture, the falling short that the real self emerges. Not the version we imagined, but the one carved out through experience. And sometimes, what blocks your path isn't there to punish you, it's there to keep you from going the wrong way. To make you pause, look closer, and move forward without fear. 3. Live in the present, the only place you have power. No one is destroyed by a single day, but many are undone by thoughts that exist outside the present. You may be sitting at your desk, but your mind is still caught in an argument from last week. You may be beside your loved ones, but your thoughts are racing through tomorrow's unfinished tasks. And when this goes on long enough, we stop truly living, we drift, a body with no soul, present in one place while our minds roam somewhere else. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, don't let your mind be carried away by what is outside of your control. This isn't an escape from reality, it's a wake-up call. Every bit of strength, every decision, every change begins not in memory or fantasy, but in the moment you are living right now. You can't rewrite the past, and you can't guarantee the future, but you always have the power to choose how you live today. I used to live inside scenarios that hadn't happened yet. Before a meeting, I'd imagine every worst-case reaction. Before a phone call, I'd rehearse lines like I was going to battle. I'd show up already burdened, and often, none of those fears came true. I missed so many meaningful moments because I was arguing with the past and future inside my head. Stoicism doesn't ask you to shut off emotion or live like a stone. It teaches something simpler. Bring your mind back to where your body already is. If you're drinking tea, really taste its warmth, notice its scent, feel the quiet of that moment. If you're talking to someone, listen with your full presence. Nothing is more precious than a mind not torn in 1,000 directions. When you live in the present, you don't just reduce anxiety, you become stronger. Every decision made from a steady mind becomes clearer, more decisive, more aligned. Every action performed with full presence becomes more effective, not because you're trying harder, but because you're no longer wasting energy on what hasn't happened or what's already gone. There's a deep peace that comes when you accept this. You don't need to control your whole life, you only need to master this moment. And if you can master this one moment, then every moment that follows will be built on the same unshakable ground. 4. Self-control is true power. You may appear strong, speak eloquently, and sway others with words or actions, but if you cannot govern yourself, it's nothing more than a fragile shell. Self-control isn't something you display outwardly, it's something you cultivate in silence, when no one is watching, when anger starts to rise, when you feel like giving up, when you crave retaliation, a defense, an easy compromise, and you don't act on it. Not because you don't feel it, but because you know what is right. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This idea runs counter to the modern definition of freedom. We live in a time where people believe that doing whatever they want, saying whatever they feel, is the essence of personal liberty. But Stoicism teaches that true freedom lies not in indulging every desire, but in not being ruled by things unworthy of you. A self-disciplined person knows when to stay silent, when to walk away, and when to stop not out of fear or weakness, but because they have already won the battle within. I once watched a colleague be humiliated in public. He had every reason, every fact, every opportunity to fight back. But he didn't. He remained silent, stepped back, and let it pass. Not because he couldn't defend himself, but because he chose to place dignity above momentary emotion. A week later, when the truth came out, the one at fault was exposed, and my colleague stood firm, calm, and more respected than ever. His strength wasn't in his words, but in his ability not to let emotion control him during the storm. Self-control is the foundation of every other virtue. You cannot have courage if fear overwhelms you. You cannot have justice if anger clouds your judgment. You cannot have integrity if desire pulls you away from principle. All good things begin from an inner life that has been tempered, a mind that no longer drifts with every wave. And most importantly, self-control isn't a privilege of the strong, it's the result of daily practice. It doesn't come from how many books you read or how much philosophy you consume, but from small decisions. When you choose to go to bed on time, even as you scroll your phone, when you keep your word even after losing interest, when you stay quiet instead of arguing just to win. In a world that rewards quick reactions, bold displays, and living fast, the one who can restrain himself is the one truly living by will, not by impulse. And that's a kind of strength no one can take from you because it depends on no one. It needs no circumstance. It only needs one thing: you. 5. Emotions are guests. Don't let them take up permanent residence. There are mornings when you wake up with a heavy heart for no clear reason. A dull sadness, a vague anxiety, a flicker of resentment towards someone even though the moment has long passed. And what we often do is let those emotions decide the tone of our day, our week, even how we see the world. But have you ever stopped and asked, do these emotions really belong to you, or are they just visitors passing through? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What troubles you is not the event itself, but your judgment of it, and you can erase that judgment at any time." This philosophy doesn't deny emotion, nor does it demand you suppress it. It simply reminds you, emotions are temporary, but the consequences of letting them drive you can be permanent. I once let a small surge of anger explode over a careless comment. The emotion flared up like a spark, and before I realized it, I had said things I regretted, slamming shut the door on a good relationship. Those few minutes turned into years of regret. Not because the feeling was wrong, but because I let it stay too long and acted as if it were absolute truth. A Stoic is not someone who feels nothing. They simply don't let emotions take over the whole stage of the mind. Like a host who knows guests will come and go, they don't shut the door on emotion, but they also don't hand over the keys. When sadness arrives, they acknowledge it. When anger rises, they observe. When disappointment knocks, they sit with it. But they don't let those feelings draw the map for the rest of their lives. True strength doesn't lie in never shedding a tear, but in not letting one tear become a flood. In not letting one moment of sorrow rewrite your entire story. In not letting one moment of rage destroy what you built with years of patience. Emotions are signals, not commands. They come to alert you something needs attention, something is off, but you're not obligated to obey all of them. You can take a step back, breathe, and ask, is this truly important? Is it worth trading my peace? And the very moment you ask that question, you're no longer the victim of your emotion, but its guide. Life isn't short on sorrow, anger, or disappointment. But the real tragedy is when we let temporary emotions become permanent identities. When we let one wound become the lens through which we view all that is good. When we let past pain shape the way we love in the present, and you deserve better than that. Let emotions come like guests, greet them with awareness, not fear. But when it's time for them to leave, let them go. Because your mind, your home, needs space to breathe, to see clearly, to be free. And that freedom begins the moment you decide who gets to stay and who must go. 6. Remember that you will die. We live as if we have unlimited time. To forgive, to begin, to say I love you, to be true to ourselves. But one day either you or someone you love won't wake up in the morning. They won't respond to your message. They won't be part of your familiar moments. And all the things you thought you still had time for will remain forever undone. It sounds grim. But to a Stoic, that truth isn't a threat, it's a wake-up call. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." We are promised nothing beyond today, and because of that, today becomes precious. When you remember that you will die, you finally begin to know how to live. I once attended a funeral for someone barely in their 30s. As I looked at their photo, I couldn't help but think, if that were me, would I have regrets? I thought of the times I stayed silent instead of speaking up. The times I delayed, thinking I'll do it tomorrow. The times I lived by others' expectations instead of doing what truly mattered. Death doesn't have to happen to you to change you. You just have to remember it's always near. Memento mori, remember you will die, is one of Stoicism's most profound principles. Not to make you afraid or cynical, but to prevent you from wasting your life on what doesn't matter. Don't torture yourself for weeks over one harsh word. Don't lose your confidence because of one cold glance. Don't live as if you have forever to begin living well. When you live with an awareness of your limits, you choose more carefully how you spend your time, how you treat others, how you care for yourself. You no longer chase perfection, you seek truth. No longer striving to stand out, but to be sincere. No longer running in all directions, but returning to one, living with meaning. Just imagine if today were your last. Would you still be angry at that person? Still lay that dream? Still stay silent when you should speak? If the answer is no, then maybe today is the day to change. You don't need to know when the end will come. You only need to live in such a way that if it comes suddenly, you can meet it with a calm smile, without regret. And that doesn't come from knowing you will die, but from remembering it so you can truly live right now. 7. Gratitude is true wealth. There are things you only see once they're gone. A hug, a simple meal, a person who always texts you good night. We live surrounded by precious things, but grow so used to their presence that we forget we're lucky to have them. Our eyes fixate on what's missing. Our ears tune into what others have, and our minds replay the question, is this really enough? And so, we keep chasing, keep demanding, keep feeling drained even when we already hold what others only dream of. Seneca once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Stoics don't measure wealth in numbers or possessions, but in the ability to feel the value of what surrounds you. When you feel grateful for a cold glass of water, a peaceful night's sleep, or a day untouched by insult, you are richer than many who chase grand things but feel empty inside. I once sat on a delayed flight, surrounded by sighs and complaints. But the old man next to me smiled, pulled out a book and said, "We're late, sure, but it means I get a few more hours of peaceful living." His words stopped me in my tracks. To him, a delay wasn't a burden, it was a chance to enjoy the quiet. Same situation, different perspective, and because of that, he was free. Gratitude is the path to inner abundance. It reveals that you have more than you think, not to stop you from striving, but to free you from suffering while already holding so much. When you are grateful, you stop comparing yourself to others, you return to yourself. When you are grateful, you stop obsessing over the future, you appreciate the moment. When you are grateful, you stop begging life for favors, you begin to see the beauty in even the simplest things. True wealth doesn't come from having everything, but from appreciating what you already have. A day without pain. A person still beside you. A body that gets tired but can still rise. A mind that's confused but learning to steady itself. When you see those things through the lens of gratitude, you don't need the world to add more, because you already see that life is not lacking. And in that same way, you stop living with a mindset of scarcity and begin to live as someone who holds a treasure. Not a treasure in your bank account, but one in your heart, the part that feels every small gift and realizes being alive is already a miracle. 8. Don't beg for recognition. Have you ever quietly hoped someone would praise you after your effort? Waited for a nod of approval from a boss, a loved one, or even a stranger? And when it didn't come, you felt disappointed, doubted your worth, and wondered, am I even on the right path? But if every step you take needs applause to continue, then you're not living your life, you're performing in someone else's expectations. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do what is right, let others talk." That's not a call for indifference or coldness, but guidance to understand that real value doesn't lie in praise, it lies in doing the right thing for its own sake. The more dependent you are on external recognition, the more easily you're controlled. Today they cheer you, feel powerful. Tomorrow they forget you feel worthless. It's a subtle prison where your mind is locked inside someone else's gaze. I once completed an important project with full dedication and effort. I expected at least a thank you, a nod, a simple message. But no one said anything. In that moment, I felt invisible. But then I realized I did the right thing by my standards. With honest effort, what more was there to need? Since then, I've learned recognition should be a reward, never the reason. Stoics act from reason and virtue, not for comfort. They need no proof for others, because they themselves are witnesses to their effort. They do what's right, even when no one sees. They live with kindness, even when no one applauds. They walk the straight path, even when the shortcut looks easier. That's true freedom, not needing to be seen to believe in your own value. Begging for recognition makes you live like someone auditioning for a role in someone else's life. But when you stop seeking approval, you begin living honestly with yourself. You don't need a spotlight to shine. You only need to light a lamp within and walk by its glow quietly, steadily, and freely. There is nothing more admirable than someone who chooses what's right without needing praise, who chooses kindness without needing an audience. Because such a person never collapses when the world turns away. 9. Turn change into a launchpad, not a burden. Most of us fear change even when we're quietly suffering in our current state. We want things to be better, but we don't want them to be different. We want to grow, but cling to comfort. So when life changes without warning, a breakup, a lost job, a health scare, we react as if we're being punished, as if something is blocking us from living fully. But what's truly frightening isn't change, it's refusing to grow because we reject the change that invites it. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In Stoicism, change is not the enemy, it's the teacher. It's the raw material for resilience, for adaptability, for inner strength. Every change is a chance to reflect, to reshape your path, and sometimes to begin living more truthfully. I once watched a friend lose everything in 3 months: career, money, and love. He didn't blame life or run away. He rewrote his values, relearned his craft, and rebuilt himself from the ashes. 2 years later, he was more successful than before, not just in skill, but in soul. Because he didn't see crisis as the end, but as the starting point of rebirth. Stoics don't avoid change, they enter it with awareness and intention. When the world shifts, they don't cling to what's no longer real. They learn to bend without breaking. They step back not to retreat, but to gather momentum. They understand. If you fight reality, you'll always be exhausted. But if you walk with it, you can make every change part of your evolution. Think about the changes that once brought you pain. Now ask yourself, if they hadn't happened, would you be stronger today? Would you have learned what you now know? Perhaps the very thing you once cursed was the turning point that brought you closer to the person you needed to become. Change is part of life's design. Leaves fall so trees can turn green again. The sun sets so a new day can begin. And you, whether you want to or not, will change. So why not learn to steer the sail instead of cursing the wind? When you stop resisting change, you're no longer life's victim, you become its navigator. And in that moment, change no longer feels like a weight. It becomes the platform for a stronger, clearer, freer version of you. 10. Live simply to see what truly matters. We live in an age where everything shines. Too much to own, too much noise to hear, too many standards to chase. Yet the more we chase, the emptier we feel. The more we accumulate, the more we sense a lack. The harder we try to have it all, the further we drift from what brings real peace. That's the paradox of excess. The more we surround ourselves with, the more disconnected we become from within. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us, very little is needed for a happy life. Everything lies in how you think. In Stoic philosophy, simplicity isn't about giving up comfort, it's about not letting your mind be enslaved by the unnecessary. Simplicity is a form of strength. It's the ability to see what truly matters and the courage to discard the rest. I once knew a woman who lived in a small apartment, no fancy car, no designer labels, no social media. But every time we spoke, I saw in her eyes a kind of peace money can't buy. She told me she had once chased fame and craved attention, but lost herself in the process. One day she asked, "If I strip all that away, what's left of me?" And from that day she began to live again from less, but more real. Stoics believe that when we live simply, we see more clearly what holds true value and what's just surface polish. When we are no longer distracted by the temporary, we discover what we truly need to be happy: a clear mind, an intentional life, a circle of honest connection, and a spirit undisturbed by endless desires. Simplicity doesn't make us lesser, it makes us free. When you need little to feel joy, no one can control you. When you know what's enough, you stop running the race with no finish line. And when you live without needing to prove anything to the world, you finally touch the depth of your own being. We don't need to become hermits or give up every comfort to live simply. What we need is discerning clarity, what fills you and what just clutters you. Learn to declutter from your thoughts to your lifestyle. Because when you strip away the decoration, you see the structure of your life, what's always been there. just hidden. Simplicity isn't just a lifestyle. It's a way of seeing what truly matters and living more fully with it. 11. Look inward to discover yourself. How many times have you looked outside for answers to the unrest inside? How often have you believed that if someone understood you, if circumstances changed, if the past had been different, then you'd be okay? But after all the disappointment, confusion, and disillusionment, you realize every answer you've searched for was never out there. It was within you. You just never sat still long enough to listen. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The human mind has the power to renew itself, to illuminate itself if it dares to look inward." Stoicism doesn't teach us to chase answers from the world. It calls us to turn inward, to question, to awaken, and to discover who we truly are. Every reaction, every feeling, every thought is a signal guiding you back to yourself if you listen without judgment. I once went through a long period of feeling lost, even when surrounded by people. I read all the books, took in all the advice, tried every self-help method, but the more I searched, the more exhausted I felt. Until one day, I sat down, silenced the noise, and asked a single question. What am I truly feeling? In that silence, I realized I didn't need a grand answer. I just needed honesty with my sadness, my wounds, my longings, and my fears. That was the moment I began to see myself clearly, not the version others expected, but the person beneath all the masks. Stoics believe that self-awareness is the first step to freedom. When you understand yourself, you're not easily manipulated. When you can face yourself, you no longer fear solitude. And when you accept your imperfect parts, you begin to grow not through the world's gaze, but through the light of truth. Looking inward isn't escaping reality. It's stepping away from the noise to connect with your deepest self, the part no one else can reach, the part only you can touch. In that place, you don't need to pretend to be strong, don't need to prove anything, don't need to be understood. You just need to be present, honest, and brave enough to face yourself even when what you see isn't perfect. And then, in that quiet, you begin to understand. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to become yourself, the clearest, most awake, and most grounded version of who you've always been. 12. Don't do everything. Do one thing fully. We live in a time where multitasking is glorified as the symbol of productivity. You're encouraged to do many things at once, chase multiple goals, and run in different directions as if that proves you're living fully. But one day, you look back and realize you went in many directions, but went deep in none. You touched many things, but nothing truly belonged to you. You were busy, but hollow, because you did everything except do one thing with your whole self. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do what you're doing as if it were the last thing you are allowed to do in life." Stoicism does not pursue fragmentation. It calls you to live with focus, to do less, but do it with full presence, unwavering attention, and unshakable integrity. When you spread yourself too thin, you not only burn out, you lose sight of why you started. And worse, you lose your depth, the only path to mastery and meaning. I once juggled 4 or 5 projects at a time. Each morning I checked dozens of emails, jumped between tasks without ever really grounding in one. I called it versatile, but in truth, I was avoiding commitment, avoiding the discomfort of choosing one thing and pouring myself fully into it. Only when I started saying no and devoted myself to a single project did I feel a deep satisfaction I'd never felt before. To live inside one thing, undistracted, whole without regret. Stoics don't care how many things you do. They care whether you do anything with your full spirit, with clarity, and with your true character. Doing one thing well is better than doing 10 things in haste. Because your worth isn't in your list of achievements, it's in the depth with which you engaged. Whether it's writing a journal page, cleaning a room, or building a life. Don't let your life be scattered into fragments of unfinished plans. Choose one worthy thing and do it like it's your final mission, your living proof of who you are. Because in the end, you won't be remembered for how many things you started, but for what you truly finished. I wasn't born calm, nor did I enter life with a steady spirit. I used to get angry over small things, used to fear change, used to chase superficial things just to feel like I mattered. But then I learned a simple truth. If you want peace, you can't wait for the world to change. You have to change yourself. Stoicism didn't make me cold. It made me more awake, gentler, and more responsible for every thought, every reaction, every choice. It didn't promise I could control the world. It reminded me that it's enough to just control myself. If you feel broken, lost, or weary in a world that moves too fast, then maybe it's time to turn inward. Not to escape, but to begin living with greater clarity. If anything in this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future content. Not because we seek recognition, but because one day a simple sentence might change how you face yourself. And if there's one thing worth keeping from everything we've shared, it's this. Calmness is not a destination. It's how you choose to live moment by moment. See you in the next video.